Trigger warning. The following message contains content about childhood sexual abuse and bullying and may be emotionally triggering in some way. Please do not listen if this will have a negative impact on you emotionally. If you need to speak with someone regarding sexual abuse or assault, please contact the National Sexual Assault Hotline operated by RAIN at 1-800-656-4673 for confidential support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can also chat with them online at online.rain.org. That's online.rain.org. My brother, my sister, you did nothing wrong. That individual, that adult that took advantage of you, they robbed you of your innocence. Your only job was to be a child, to play tag with your friends, to play catch, to play dress up, to be a little girl or little boy, to enjoy your siblings if you had siblings, and to just be. But instead, you were violated in an inexcusable, unfair, traumatic, and painful way. You didn't know or understand the magnitude of what happened or what was happening to you. You just know that something was wrong. It didn't feel right. And it didn't feel right emotionally because of the fear, the loneliness, and the sadness. You couldn't explain the lack of desire to want to play with others or be around others. There were feelings of inadequacy, feelings of just being different or feeling differently, but you did nothing wrong. What that person did to you was devious. It was sneaky. It was a crime. It was painful and wrong. They knew better and should not have done what they did. But you, on the other hand, did nothing wrong. As a child, you could not fully process the fact that what was being done to you was wrong because you were still trying to understand what happened. You felt alone and felt like you couldn't tell anyone. So you lived with the secret for years. As you got older, you lived with anxiety, the anxiety and fear the secret caused. In some cases, it made you promiscuous because you were chasing a feeling. You were chasing love in all the wrong places. Because what you went through, the violation you went through, whether it was once, twice, or went on for years, it's not something you ever forget. It comes out in different ways. You may think you buried it by overworking yourself or by having children or getting married or, being in certain relationships. But it never, ever goes away. I have been where you are. I was molested, I believe for a couple of years or just under 2 years, by 2 individuals from a church I attended. I was a little girl, innocent. I didn't know what was going on. I was born in South America, and at that time, we didn't have TVs in the house. I didn't have a TV show to look at that would give me any indication of what molestation was or rape or anything like that, any type of sexual assault. I didn't have anything that showed me what that was. I didn't have anything to compare it to. I didn't see images of this being done to anyone, and I didn't know what to call it because I was a child. I just know that what was happening felt disgusting. Even as a child, I could say I felt disgusted and lonely. At that young age, I felt like I was on the outside looking in. I had no control over it. I was threatened not to tell my grandmother, and I felt like it was something I was supposed to do or be a part of because this was a grown person. They were the adults, so I felt like I was at their mercy and had to do whatever they said, but I knew it didn't feel right. I was afraid to tell anyone because of the fear they put in me. I could remember even at that young age feeling very anxious, but didn't know I was struggling with anxiety. I can remember my heart beating really, really, really fast whenever they would come around. It was really hard to process as a child what I was feeling and what I was looking for or hoping to happen. I didn't have those images to envision. I just knew that at some point I wanted somebody to walk in and just do something. Now, what that something was, I don't know. I still have images of body parts that I should not have seen at that age. The texture, the smell, the look, images that still disgust and haunt me to this day. I can remember feeling lonely, isolated, and just different. I'm not sure if these feelings put me in a position to be bullied, but the bullying started at school shortly after. I was constantly beat up by a group of girls from school. After school was by far the worst because they would gang up on me and literally take turns beating me up. They would push me and hit me. I remember one day after school trying to leave to go home, and they followed me and pushed me down, which caused me to fall into a small ditch. This was across from my school. I can remember running home and telling my grandmother. I think my knee at that time had some scrapes from the fall. Again, all part of that lonely, isolating feeling of not being able to fully comprehend or fully tell anyone everything that was going on with me. At some point, I began to feel that I was marked because more things started to happen. Like I would be sitting on a bus or a train and would see some random man doing something inappropriate in a sexual way. Or there were several instances where a man at a grocery store and in another situation just exposed himself to me. Things like that continued to happen. I felt like I was marked, and even then, going through my childhood, my teenage years, I still couldn't really process what happened. It wasn't until I moved to the United States from South America that I began to realize the magnitude of what I had experienced. I could remember being with my mom and her employer at a beach house in Long Island, New York. And I'll never forget that defining moment for me. I think the adults were outside and I was sneaking and watching TV because I wasn't allowed to watch TV during the week. I can't remember the name of the show or what the overall premise of the show was, but I do know that there was one scene where there was a woman running and a man grabbed her. I guess the woman was running away from him. He caught up to her, he grabbed her and threw her on the floor, and she was screaming. He was on top of her and she was crying and screaming and trying to fight him off. After a while, she just stopped crying and screaming and just laid still with him still on top of her. It was at that moment when I realized and was able to correlate some of what I went through with what that woman was going through, minus later on in the episode, it was revealed that the woman was raped. Although I was not raped, there were some similarities that were triggering for me, like the guy being on top of the woman. It made me realize that what I went through was similar from a traumatic standpoint, but that what I went through was criminal. As I was going through my teen years and somewhat interacting with others, I would hear, my classmates or peers talk about sex and how they were going to the prom and plan to have sex that night or going to a party and were planning to have sex. I started really looking at what sex was, and I was grossed out by it and disgusted by it. There was nothing about sex that intrigued me because it felt dirty. The thought of it felt dirty, and I realize now that those feelings were a result of everything I went through as a child. Even still, early in my 20s, I entered into a relationship with someone and had my first sexual encounter. I honestly can't tell you that it was a pleasurable experience for me because all it did was cause me to flash back. I ended up getting pregnant and giving birth to my first beautiful daughter. This was exactly what I needed at the time. and I didn't even realize it. I needed someone to love and pay attention to and distract me from all the negative things that I experienced. That is ultimately what it did. I buried myself in being a mother. Shortly after, I met my now husband and got married at 25 years old. My husband is a wonderful, loving man. He had a daughter before we got married, and together we had a daughter. So I buried myself in my family. I buried myself in my work so I didn't have to deal with those memories. Even as a married woman, married to my fine, sexy, and handsome husband, sex for me was tainted and triggering. It is so unfair what I was robbed of as a child and how it has affected me even in adulthood. Through the years, I buried myself in work. Work for the last 20 plus years has been stressful and busy. It kept me busy, but I was unfulfilled. I was working to be working, and I knew that something was lacking and blocking me from living my best life because I didn't take the time to really plan my life out, to figure out what it was I wanted to do with my life or what career path I wanted to go under or pursue. I was just existing, living to work basically, and not working to live. There was something holding me back, something preventing me from truly living and experiencing and enjoying life. It sounds crazy because the life that my husband and I created for our family, for our girls, it wasn't a bad life. I didn't have a bad life even at the time I started processing everything about 10, 12 years ago. From the outside looking in, I wasn't in a bad place. I have a husband who adores, loves, and spoils me, and children who love, respect, and care for me. We had great experiences, great vacations, great fun moments. But deep down inside, something was still lacking. Something was different. I was different. I was dealing with internal pain and turmoil. I allowed people overall to do what they wanted to do and say what they wanted to say, whether my feelings were considered or not. I allowed people to mistreat me, talk about me, and call me whatever they wanted to call me or speak whatever negative or negativity they wanted to speak over my life. And I allowed it. I allowed it because I felt like I deserved it. I felt like I was tainted goods. I didn't know my value. I didn't know my worth. I never wanted to hurt people. I never wanted to be the one to be mean or be the bully. I allowed people to do whatever and say whatever they wanted to say at my expense. I put myself on the back burner and just allowed those negative things to happen. In the last 10 to 12 years, I began to fully process where a lot of my anxiety came from. I began to process where some of my fear and isolation came from. And it all stems from what I went through as a little girl that I didn't deal with. The innocence being taken away from me, the sadness, the isolation, the loneliness, the frustration. I allowed it to not only consume me, but control me. I allowed it to have that power over me. I allowed it to subsequently impact and negatively affect my husband, our marriage, our household. I did the work to analyze and process exactly where, how, and why my anxiety attacks started. I have struggled with anxiety for most of my life. Anxiety which derived from what happened to me as a child. Anxiety from anticipating the violator's next visit or next event. Anxiety from being on the train in New York on my way to school, fearing when that train violator, that man, that person that I never turned around to look at, would find me, regardless of what train car I was in, and then stick his fingers between my legs from the back. I was so afraid that I never turned around to see what he or she looked like. It happened over and over until one time it happened in such a rough way that it scared me even more than the norm. And then as soon as the doors to the train opened up, Without even realizing what stop I was at, I ran out and did not stop. I kept running. My heart was beating so fast and I was breathing hard. I remember running up the escalator stairs and then running out onto a major busy street in Manhattan, New York. I looked around, scared, thinking he was following me. Heart beating so fast, racing, breathing hard. Oh my goodness. Anxiety from the guy on the bus, rubbing his leg and looking at me. I remember this so vividly because it looked like he had an umbrella, a big umbrella in his pants. But he was looking at me and just rubbing his leg, his thigh. Anxiety from feeling marked. Anxiety really, really took a toll on my mental and emotional state and my self-esteem. The process of digging deep and analyzing was painful. It was a painful process because I had to relive and go to those dark places in order to dissect and fully understand where my anxiety and internal pain and turmoil came from. It revealed things I didn't want to deal with, but I had to deal with and address it in order to be healthy, whole, and free. I wanted to figure out who I was. I didn't want those circumstances to dictate how I lived my life. So I made a choice, a conscious choice to free myself, to take my power back because I did nothing wrong. What those individuals did to me, that was wrong. They were wrong, and they will have hell to pay. I don't believe that those things go unpunished. Even if it's not punished through the legal system, karma is a beast. It's between them and God at this point. As for me, I have chosen to reclaim my power and choose me. I have forgiven myself for things that I thought I did wrong. I have forgiven myself for allowing those individuals to have that power over me for so long. Because I did nothing wrong. Free yourself. You did nothing wrong. You are punishing yourself unfairly. It's time to free yourself because you did nothing wrong. What those individuals did to you, that was wrong. They were wrong. Take your power back. Reclaim your power. You relinquished your power to the ones who violated you. You gave them the upper hand in multiple ways. And even though they may not be violating you physically, they are still violating you mentally and emotionally. You deserve your power back. You've been through too much and have punished yourself long enough. It stops now. Take your power back. Forgive yourself. It's time to live. It's time to live in your truth. Remove the guilt and shame. Free yourself from the anger. Free yourself from that tension. Free yourself from the turmoil and from the trauma and from the embarrassment of it all. Free yourself from the silence. Free yourself. Speak your truth because you did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong. You were a child. You were innocent. You did nothing wrong. Break out of those shackles. It's time to live. Free yourself from those shackles. What you went through is something you will never, ever, ever forget. But use those memories and turn it into something positive. Turn it into something good. Be a mentor to someone else who may be struggling and trying to find a way out themselves. Free yourselves from the pain. Free yourselves from the past that is still very much a part of your present. Don't be afraid or ashamed to talk about it. You can start the process of freeing yourself and reclaiming your power by talking about it. If you are married and have not told your spouse, it's time to have that conversation. If you have not told your parents, siblings, or trusted friend, it's time to sit them down and tell them what happened. Remember, you did nothing wrong. Don't worry about being believed because it's your truth. You know what happened. God knows what happened. Tell it, share it, and free yourself from it. Free yourself from the stigma. It's time to live. Cry it out, scream it out, whatever you have to do to get it out and free yourself from it, do it. Take that power back. It's time to live. You did nothing wrong. Put the past behind you. Enlist the services of a licensed professional therapist. You will need therapy in order to learn the valuable tools needed to move forward. You have to deal with your trauma, or your trauma will deal with you. No, you will never forget what happened. But you can learn all of the tools that are needed and necessary to cope and move forward. Share your story with confidence. Cry it out, scream it out, get it out. Write it down. Write all of your fears, all of your concerns, all of the hurt, all of the pain. Write it down on a piece of paper. Write it in a journal. However long it takes, get it all out. Then forgive yourself. Forgive yourself, then burn it. Burn those pages. It's symbolic of you burning the past and moving forward. Breathe through it. You are worthy. You are valuable. You are needed. You are wanted. I see you. I see you. I feel you. I love you. I love you, my sister. I love you, my brother. Breathe. Be free. Live.
This is Reclaiming My Power. I Choose Me.